This is an honest review of the Bambu Lab's P1P. But first of all, this printer was not supplied by Bambu Labs. I bought the P1P with my own money, so my judgment isn't compromised. The P1P from Bambu Labs is basically a cheaper version of the X1 Carbon, and if you take a look at it, you will quickly see that they basically removed anything that isn't absolutely necessary. The enclosure is gone, the ladder sensor isn't there, and it doesn't have an auxiliary part cooling fan. No chamber camera, and the P1P doesn't have a fancy multicolor touchscreen like the X1 Carbon. To see if the P1P is still a good printer even after losing all of these features, we'll start at the beginning. Bambu Labs claim that you can get started right out of the box within 15 minutes. So let's test that. And right away I have to say the packaging of the P1P was really good. All the important parts were secured with sufficient amount of packaging material that could be removed easily, and the instructions were easy to follow. There are also stickers that show you exactly what screws to remove and where to mount the filament holder. Overall, the whole setup was very easily and quickly done, but as you can see, not quite in 15 minutes. It took me a little over 18 minutes to get the printer to this stage, and then I still had to connect the printer to my Wi-Fi and install the app on my phone. And while both of these steps are optional, I still had to wait for the P1P to do its initial automatic calibration and load the filament. Overall, 15 minutes for setting everything up is not happening in my opinion. It's more like 25 minutes. But still, the printer is easy to set up and the instructions are very easy to follow. I also have to say that the P1P is the most well-designed and well-thought-out printer that I have ever seen. You know, it's these little things, like the slightly longer hex key that allows you to easily install a filament holder, or the stops at the end of the heated bed that allow you to place the magnetic build plate perfectly every single time. It's just so well thought out. You should also know that the P1P does not come with an AMS, the automatic material system that Bambu Labs advertises on their site. If you look at the official product page of the P1P, you will see that one of the features that Bambu Labs offers is that you can print with 16 different colors. That is not quite true because you have to buy the AMS separately in order to do that, but the P1P is compatible with the AMS. So, right out of the box, the P1P is only able to print one singular color, but to be honest, most of the time this is more than enough. By the way, here's everything you get with the printer. A 1 kilogram spool of matte white PLA, tools and screws for assembly and replacements, screws for the custom shell, more on that later, a replacement for the hot end, an extra razor blade for the filament cutter, a needle for unclogging, 2 extra nozzle wiping pads, and a small manual. Before starting your first print though, you have to calibrate the P1P. As I mentioned before, this happens fully automatically. The P1P levels its bed and runs some vibration tests to ensure best quality even at high printing speeds. By the way, the vibration tests can get very loud. This whole process takes around 5 minutes and only has to be done once. And after loading the filament, the printer is finally ready to print its first model. I chose to print one of the models that were already preloaded on the SD card, and the results were pretty impressive. I never had a printer that worked that well and effortlessly right out of the box. No troubleshooting, no manual bed leveling, no adhesion issues, nothing. The P1P simply works. After the first little test, I decided to print a Benchy. It was completed in little over 20 minutes and it looked great. The print quality is simply great. There was some very slight stringing, but other than that, this Benchy is as good as it gets. And a 20-minute Benchy without any tuning on the default settings is very impressive. I am using Bambu Studio to slice the models for the P1P, by the way, and printed all of the models seen in this video on the default settings without any adjustments. Next, I printed a calibration cube to test the accuracy of the P1P, and again, this printer is one of the most accurate printers I've ever used. It was only off by 0.01 mm on the Z-axis, which is pretty much nothing. And again, the print quality was amazing, especially if you consider that the P1P prints very fast. On average, it prints at 250 millimeters per second and has an acceleration of 10,000 millimeters per second while printing normally. Next, I decided to print one of the custom side panels that are advertised on Bambu Lab's homepage for my P1P, and sadly, this is where I ran into some issues. You can choose between several different custom side panels, like the pegboard side plate, the artistry mod plate, or the armor plate. But I decided to print the pixel mod plate because, well, I like pixel art. You can download the instructions and the print file for free on the official Bambu Lab site. The print files are great. You don't have to do anything but click on the plate you want to print and then send it to the P1P. Everything is already prepared for you in the file. The assembly instructions aren't great, but they're generally enough so that you can figure out how to install the panels. The print quality of the panels was amazing, as always, but the brim was a bit annoying to remove, and I'm not quite sure that you really need a brim for these prints. Now let's get into the issues. The first issue I had when assembling the panels was that they fit very tightly, so it was very hard to get them to fit together without any force. The instructions mention that you should use a rubber hammer to hammer them in, but even when using a rubber hammer, as you can see right here, it didn't quite work. In the end, I had to use a metal center punch that I held sideways to hammer the panels together at the seam. The rest of the installation went smoothly, and I was able to pretty quickly create my first artwork with the pixels on my new side panels. But then I wanted to make something more complex, and this is where I ran into some serious issues with the whole pixel design. As you can see, the pixels kept falling off, and most of them could not be pressed fully on the panel. And I simply gave up after the same few pixels kept falling off, often taking other pixels with them. The whole panel idea seems to me like a last-minute idea that Bambu Labs quickly realized before releasing the P1P without testing it properly. It is a great idea to be able to print your own custom panels, but I don't think all of the panel designs received as much attention to detail as the printer itself got. I know that some of the panels seem to work great, like the pegboard side panel, but the pixel custom plate is not really as thought out, unfortunately. There are a few things I don't like about the P1P, for example its high power consumption compared to other 3D printers, and the fact that the printer is a closed system, meaning you can only buy replacement parts at the official Bambu Lab site, as almost all of the important parts are custom made by them. Now, the prices for the custom parts aren't overpriced, so as long as the availability is good and the prices stay low, this isn't going to be a big issue. Now, I already mentioned that the P1P has quite high power consumption. It is between 160 and 260 watts during printing, but it can go all the way up to 300 watts at times. This is quite high if you consider that most 3D printers will consume around 130 to 200 watts on average. But the P1P is also very fast. On average, it is 4 times faster than most other 3D printers. So even though it consumes more power during printing than other printers will generally take a lot longer to print the same model. Finally, the P1P is also quite loud during printing. This is something that I personally don't really care about as much, but I still want to mention it in case you care about it. The P1P will on average reach around 60 decibels during printing. When it prints the first few layers, it's only around 50 decibels, but after that it will seriously speed up, reaching 60 to 63 decibels at times. Overall, the P1P has very little drawbacks, and it is one of the few printers where I simply start the print job and then leave. I don't have to stay and control if the first few layers are good or anything. Once the printer is done, I get a message to my phone and I return to a perfectly finished print. I only had one clogged nozzle during testing, and Bambu Labs has some great resources on their site that will basically help you with any issue you might encounter. I also decided to test the P1P by using it to print a personal project of mine. I basically printed this whole lamp, you can see right here, with the P1P, and it turned out really great. If you want to see how I built that, then consider watching the video on my main channel. Overall, I would rate the P1P a 9 out of 10. I would highly recommend this printer to any beginner. It's probably the best choice you have right now.